We'll now call the 7 Clark County Commissioners meeting to order. I'll call on Mr. Johnson for invocation.
Let's pray, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this opportunity to serve the people of this county, but mostly for the opportunity to serve you. I pray tonight that others will see Jesus Christ in us as we conduct your affairs and their affairs. And Father, I pray that there will be an understanding that we live in a world of finite resources, and we need wisdom to properly apply those resources to the problems which confront us. We pray for that wisdom. We pray your blessing on each one here, and we ask it in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen.
Let us stand for our pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Call on Mr. Mashman for adjustments to the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I only have one adjustment to the agenda this evening. Would like to add under closed session discussion on property acquisition. That's 143-318-11A5. That's property acquisition. Mr. Chair, that's all of the adjustments to the agenda.
Thank you, Mr. Mashman. Are there any additional adjustments to the agenda? If not, do I hear a motion to accept the agenda?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay. Are there any questions regarding the motion? If not, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, likewise. Appointments before the board. Ms. Anna Rice, Council on Aging.
Mr. Chairman and members of the board, I'm here this evening to present Iredale's proposed 2009 Aging Funding Plan for your review and consideration. Let me frame the plan with just a few comments about aging in our county. Iredale County's 60-plus population is close to 27,000 people. And not unlike the state as a whole, our 60-plus population showing significant and continued growth. One analogy has been used that, like a steadily rising tide, the baby boomers are entering the ages where they're beginning to need and qualify for aging services and programs. Many of us born between 1946 and 1964 are learning about and turning to the very services that we need to help care for our parents or other aging relatives in their 70s, 80s, and 90s. Our county, like the entire state, faces the challenge of providing services for the remaining members of the greatest generation, those folks who were young during World War I and are now in their 80s and older, as well as providing services for the young old as they age and become more vulnerable. What does this mean for Iredale County? This means the Council on Aging will continue to provide services along the whole continuum of care, adjusting to the new attitudes of baby boomers needing services while keeping our frail elderly in their homes and in their communities as long as possible. If I could direct your attention to the fiscal year 2009 Aging Funding Plan, which I believe you have a copy of, we'll continue providing vital services such as transportation to medical appointments as well as the grocery store. We'll help the 85-year-old woman living at the Plaza Apartments in Statesville or on Circle Drive in Mooresville stay in her apartment by providing chore services once a week, maintaining a safe and clean environment for her to continue to live independently. We'll help the couple married for 50-plus years remain at home. She's taking care of him 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, as he suffers from the indignities of Alzheimer's disease. Our respite service means this devoted wife can leave the house at least once or twice a week to get groceries, run errands, or just take a break from the constant demands of caregiving. We'll continue our nutrition services, offering congregate meals in Mooresville, Troutman, Statesville, and Harmony, providing a gathering place for seniors to enjoy a balanced meal and that all-important human contact on a daily basis. For those too frail to leave the house, volunteers will deliver a meal to the lone, isolated senior dealing with too many infirmities to prepare a balanced meal each day. And for seniors needing a variety of service, we'll continue providing countless opportunities at the agency's Iredell Senior Center in Statesville and South Iredell Senior Center in Mooresville, both of which, incidentally, I'm proud to report were certified this year by the North Carolina Division of Aging as Centers of Excellence. What kinds of services are offered at the senior centers? It could be help in applying for the tax stimulus. It could be help deciding on a Medicare Part D program to determine which plan will best serve the older adult. Or it could be art, or it could be line dancing, or it could be writing senior memories for grandchildren, or learning to use the computer, or taking a driver's refresher course. And what about senior theater, or the diabetes support group, or the water exercise, or Tai Chi to improve balance? The opportunities are endless. So what does it mean for Iredell's aging population to have funding to provide these services? What it means is that the Home and Community Care Block Grant Committee, which you appointed, met in late April and prepared the proposed aging plan for fiscal year 2009. The group considered current service levels and heard about waiting lists for services. And in the final analysis, they proposed a plan that will use the increased funding, which this year is approximately an increase of 4.4%, or a little over $32,000, for transportation services, chore services, and home-delivered meals, while suggesting and recommending that the other services remain flat at the current funding 2008 levels. Older Americans Act dollars, which are also Home and Community Care Block Grant dollars, require a minimum of 10% local matching funds, and the county has helped the Council on Aging meet this requirement, and in doing so brings back $9 in federal funds for every dollar contributed by the county, and we appreciate this vital support. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have about the proposed plan and appreciate your consideration in approving the 2009 Aging Funding Plan. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. Are there any questions?
I don't have a question, but I would just like to thank Anna Rice for her many years of caring for our senior citizens, and she's been on board a long time. I'm not sure just how long, but I do know that she cares for our senior citizens, and she's done a super job with the Council on Aging, and we appreciate it.
Thank you, Ms. Tice. I'm celebrating my 30th anniversary. I started very young.
Wow. I thought I had a record. But thank you
for your
for all
kind
that you do.
comments. Thank you.
But she just needs approval of this,
Okay.
the funding.
Would you like to make that motion?
Mr. Chairman, I would like to make a motion that we approve this 0809 county funding plan for the Home and Community Care Block Grant.
Thank you, Ms. Tice. Any additional comments or questions? All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, likewise. Ms. Ellen Patterson.
Commissioners, Chairman, thanks for having us. What you're seeing about, I am Wayne McGuire. I'm the president of the Mooresville Artists Guild, pardon me. Ellen Patterson and I have come to present to you just a little PowerPoint slideshow about the Mooresville Artists Guild and what we do, and an event that's coming up in 2010. So first of all, the American Watercolor Society's traveling exhibit is going to be hitting cities around the United States, and the first stop is the first stop us? First stop is the Mooresville Artist Guild. Now, this is the type of show that you would see at the Mint Museum or maybe the Hodges Taylor Gallery in Charlotte. So we're we feel blessed to be able to host this event. And it's going to be held at the Art Gallery in Mooresville. I think we're out of sync here. Hold on a second, please. Yes, we are. This was towards the tail end, and that is why I'm so confused, which is a normal state. We won't talk about that. Okay, what's happening? Okay, our mission is to support the visual arts. That's pretty straightforward. We've been blessed with the depot in Mooresville, and it's a place that has a few years on it, and we're doing our best to keep it going and make it a place where the community can come to explore the arts, and that is our mission. So what we've done is we've taken volunteer labor, and we've repainted the place. We put in new floors. And as you can see, we have, on this particular day, we had about 6 people working and then 1 fellow supervising in the lower right-hand corner. We hold workshops. We have workshops for children. We have workshops for adults. We teach classes from within. We have experts. We have world-class artists that are members of MAG, and they share their expertise and their skills with our fellow members. Now, you have a company here in Statesville, Speedball, that manufactures products that are used by artists, and we've had them come down and put on demonstrations with us. And we also reach out to world-class artists that unless you're in the art world, you may not have heard of Tony Couch, but he's well known across the United States and Canada. He came to Mooresville, and we put on a workshop that drew, how many people were in the workshop, Ellen?
No, 22, 20-something.
No, it's close to 30 artists. And this was conducted over a week's time, brought business to the Charles Mack Center and people into our area from across the Metrolina area. Now, this was the Tony Couch workshop, and the lower right-hand corner is an example of his work. And, of course, these are our artists and people that came in to take part in his workshops. Now, Speedball this event was held at the depot. And this is typical. We will fill up the third gallery with tables and chairs, and we'll have someone come in and show special materials and techniques. Now, Youth Art Month. That was May. We reached out to the schools in the area and invited any art teachers to select works from their art classes and bring them into the depot for exhibit. And then we handed out awards for first, second, and third place in each school category. Here you have the prize winners. And there were 3 winners in each grade category. We actually printed out certificates, official certificates, and awarded cash prizes as an incentive for future engagement. Now, I also have fundraising events. Actually, we have one big one that we have each year. And this Blue Moon Ball was started last year in June 30th, I believe, on a blue moon, hence the name Blue Moon Ball. We pay for a band, bring in catered services. Some of the members will bring in food. Members will bring in artwork for sale. Some members contribute art for an auction so that anything that's sold the funds come back to the Mooresville Artist Guild. And now we come to the American Watercolor Society. When the Society's traveling exhibit reaches Mooresville, we're going to have 40 pieces of art that are going to be securely crated and ready to be exhibited once we uncrate them. Now, we have agreed to insure the exhibit, to pay for the shipping, the crating, and the insurance from our point to the next point. This is an example of the works of art, and all of these are works that have been awarded various awards. This is world-class art, and they have, 100 members in the American Watercolor Society, and this is examples of their work. Now, about us and what we see coming to the depot. This is typical of 2007 and 2008. And this is an unofficial tally. We have a docent, a person that is familiar with the Mooresville Artist Guild and the arts, sit each day that we're able to have someone there, and they record the visitors. And this is just the attendance over the months, 2007 and 2008. Now, we also keep track of where our visitors come from. And as you can see, a little over 58%, I believe is the exact number, come from North Carolina. And the next up is New York City, believe it or not. 8% of our visitors come from New York. And then California represents another huge segment that comes to visit. And that's pretty much it. We're at the Mooresville Artist Guild. Now, we come to you just for two reasons. We'd like to grow. Everyone needs money. Everyone comes to you guys for money, but everyone tells me you guys are broke. We're broke too. We're a nonprofit. We do manage to raise some monies, and we, as you can see from the slideshow, we're not afraid to work. We put in sweat equity. We buy the materials we can. We put in a new floor in the front gallery, a new floor in the back gallery. We get what we can from the city in the way of building maintenance. On the exterior, that's their job. The interior is our job. And we're making great strides in making this place a proper place for this type of show. So, at this point in time, I don't have a request of you. It's just I'd like you to consider us for the budget for next year. And I will come to you for a request, and I'd welcome any discussion.
I'd like to say a couple words.
My boss would like to say a few words.
I would like to say about the American Watercolor Society show. This is, Mooresville will be one of 11 places in the United States that this will be shown, and it's the first time that it has ever been to North Carolina. We are actively going to be promoting it through various places such as the Our State magazine, some television, and some other sources that we have been trying to work with. I've been contacting and have talked with several people with the schools, and we feel that this would be, since it'll be at the end of the year, it'll be a good place for the children to come to see world-class art on a field trip. And we have been working with Travel and Tourism in the area, and they are going to be helping us promote this and to bring people into Iredell County, Lake Norman area, but into this area. And we hope to be able to spread the wealth throughout the county, as well as not just in the Mooresville area. So, we would appreciate any help that the county commissioners can help give us.
We have committed to spending around $6,000 to support this show so far. And that is not considering any advertising budget. It's just in the insurance and the handling of the art and security for when the art is on display. So we've made a commitment. And I think it's a commitment for a very good reason. I'm glad to see this type of event come to Iredell County, and I'd like to see more of it. So this is going to be a test for us. Now, we have the luxury of 5 minutes. Do you have any questions?
Yeah, I did. There was a big spike in the number of visitors you had in May. What was your average visitor?
We had a special
about 200
event.
to 300. It went over 800.
Yeah, we had a special event in 2007, And we opened the doors, and it coincided with a city event. And the building filled up. There was hardly any space to stand. That was the reason that we had the number of 900 visitors that month. So one day we had over 400 people in the building.
Okay, but they were coming for so they didn't come, you weren't their destination. They just used
The city
your
was the
facilities?
destination, and we worked with the city to be sure that we would be open. We had refreshments, and we had an event for them to view.
Okay, and what sort of draw do you believe that this exhibit would bring, and how long would it be? How long would it be on display?
It will be on display for 1 month.
For 1 month?
And, yes, and I personally would like to see us bring several thousand people from the, not just from Iredell County, but statewide, bring some people up through South Carolina, because this is the only place in the South that it's going to be. And so, as I said, we're going to be putting the information and publicizing it in just about everything that we can find. I know people come from all over, all over in other areas to see this type of exhibit. So I would like to see us at 5,000, 6,000 people, maybe more.
You said it's going to cost $6,000 to bring the exhibit here, but that doesn't touch any of the advertising that you would need to do
No,
to actually get
none at all.
people.
No.
Okay, and how much in advertising are you looking at?
I'm really not sure. We haven't put the numbers to paper yet. I approached WFAE about their advertising program. They wanted $2,000 for 2 weeks of air exposure, and WDAV was a little more reasonable. I see those as two advertising vehicles for us because they have a wide listening audience. WFAE and WBT are the two Goliaths in the drive time market in the Charlotte area.
And I have talked to people at WBT. They say that's a little far out, but they're penciling us in as being a host sponsor, and possibly they can't commit yet, but with bringing some people and the cameras up.
Now, for the Tony Couch workshop, we had people drive several hundred miles to take part in the 1 week workshop. And I would imagine that this would be a better draw.
All right, thanks.
Ms. Patterson, Mr. McGuire, thank you for coming. Are there any additional questions from board members? If not, thank you. We'll take this under consideration.
Well, thank you for having us.
Thank you.
I now declare the meeting to be in a public hearing. Our first consideration of an economic development incentive. I'm going to call on Ms. Tice.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Robert Carney, our existing industry and marketing manager for the MSI Economic Development Corporation, could not be here to make this request tonight. So, as chairman of this EDC board, I would like to make a request for consideration of an economic development incentive for the expansion of an industry, Carolina Beer and Beverage in Mooresville. We would appreciate the consideration of $196,690 over a 5-year period, incentive based on a $11,050,000 investment. This expenditure will be used for site development. Source of funding will be the general revenues of Iredell County, and in accordance with the Iredell County Industrial Incentive Policy, benefit to the county will be stimulation of local economy, promotion of business, employment opportunities for county citizens. And I would thank you very much for your consideration of this incentive, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Stutts, how many new employees will that bring? Do you remember?
30. About 30. It's for a 300,000 square foot building that will be used as a distribution center.
Thank you, Ms. Ty. Any other questions from board members? If not, do we have anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor or against this request?
I really wasn't aware that this was on the agenda,
Could you
but
please state your name, ma'am?
my name's Jean Cranfield. I live in Harmony. Quite frankly, I find it offensive that our county would be offering an incentive for alcoholic beverage. I think it's against Christian principles.
Thank you. I would like to state that while they do serve beer, while they do sell beer and beverage, it's my understanding that this distribution center will be for beverages other than beer.
Primarily,
Carolina Beer, I mean, they mainly make the sports drinks. So it's not, even though Carolina Blonde is their trademark beverage, that's the minority part of their business.
they said the greatest growth in their business has been the energy drinks.
Right.
Right.
Okay. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak in favor or against this request? Now's the time. Okay, if there's no one else, then I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion that we grant the economic incentive as described by Ms. Tice.
Okay, you heard the motion. Are there any questions regarding the motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, likewise. Okay, ayes have it. Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Board of Commissioners. The first rezoning that we have tonight is a request from Don and Terry Moore and Matthew Carley to rezone approximately 1 acre on Stutts Road from RA residential agriculture to RO residential office. This property is located at 131 Stutts, which is about, I would say, 300 to 400 feet down Stutts Road, surrounded by general business, some residential, and as you know, the development that is occurring on Brawley School Road. There is a proposed Bloom shopping center or Bloom store and an associated shopping center that will be going across the street. This shows the parcel. As you can see, it's one corner of a much larger piece that we have designated as commercial in our Brawley School Road small area plan. This is the house that's located on the property. View of the home to the south, which is going down Stutts Road away from Brawley School. Looking south on Stutts, and as you can see, there is some commercial that comes all the way down past this property, which is the self-storage. This is looking across the street from the property and looking back toward Brawley School Road. This is the field I was talking about. The planning staff and the planning board as well, we all feel that this is in compliance with our Brawley School Road small area plan, and as you know, the road is continuing to go commercial, especially at these nodes like at Bloom and Beechtree and Stutts Road. So we recommend in favor of this. I'd be glad to try and answer any questions that you have.
Do you have any questions, Mr. Smith? Is there anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor or against this request? If not, because this public hearing closed, do I have a motion to go into this request?
Mr. Chairman, I'd offer the motion to approve this zoning map amendment, and I find that the approval is consistent with the adopted Brawley School Peninsula Small Area Plan This approval is reasonable and in the public interest due to its consistency with the Raleigh School Peninsula Small Area Plan, and it furthers the goals and objectives of this plan. For those reasons, I offer that motion.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any questions from the board at this time regarding that motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, likewise. Okay, Mr. Smith.
The next request that I have is to rezone almost 750 acres, which is north of Harmony. It's an area that's bounded by Eagle Mills Road and Harmony Highway, and which runs along Houstonville Road. This request has been brought to us by Maxine Henderson and Elaine Johnson. They are 2 of 40 properties that are included in the request. There are 33 signatures that were submitted to us in on a petition out of the 40 property owners, which gives them 82.5% of the property owners that are in favor of changing the zoning. The request is to go from RA, residential agriculture, to RUR, rural residential. The proposed intent of the rezoning is to limit the future development of any mobile home parks or single-wide mobile homes. I will say that the RUR district was developed for cases such as this, and it has some flexibility built in. And in this proposed district, there would be double-wide mobile homes that would be allowed with aesthetic standards, and accessory mobile homes, which could be a single-wide, that could be allowed for someone that would be living on the same piece of property as a stick-built home. This area, as you all probably know, is very rural in nature. There are several farms in the area, quite a bit of vacant property. It's a huge area, almost 750 acres, and there are only 40 property owners, so that kind of gives you a scale of what we're dealing with. Back in the late or mid to late 90s, we had 2 other rezonings that were similar to this. The R20 district that ran along Harmony Highway going back towards the town, and RUR, which was at a later date back in 99, that went north, more or less the same acreage and very similar to the southern one. This is looking out from Eagle Mills Road, and as you'll see from all of these pictures, they're just basically farmland and just rural in nature. And that more or less sums up, what the topography and geography of the area is. Typically, when these requests have come to our office, we've tried to work with the applicant to come up with the best boundaries as are possible, at least in our estimation. And I feel like the boundaries that have been developed for this particular case are reasonable and sound. And the fact that they have over 80% in agreement to rezone the area, we have typically, from the planning staff level, made a favorable recommendation, which we have done here. And at their last meeting, the planning board also made a favorable recommendation by unanimous vote. So both entities are in agreement with this, and we find that the land use is sound and would recommend for it. And I'd be glad to answer any questions.
Have any questions for Mr. Smith? Thank you, Mr. Smith.
Mr. Smith, it's just so folks know that manufactured housing is permissible, but the standards are pretty strict. It has to be pretty much the same building code has to be met as a site-built home. It's 12-1 pitch, permanently attached porch.
That's exactly right. Brick underpinning or masonry underpinning, things of that nature.
And I know it doesn't apply anymore, but it is still relevant, at least in my mind, that the way we used to do it, if 80% of the petitioners were in favor of it, the way we used to do it, that petition was deemed appropriate. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor or against this request at this time?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, my name is William Henderson, and I've been asked to speak on behalf of the landowners in their request to change the zoning from RA to RUR. My interest in this particular zoning issue stems from the fact that the area in question is where I grew up. West Houstonville Road is a beautiful farm community that has a panoramic view of the mountains. It's a very close-knit community where neighbors are like family. Many of the residents of the area have grown up, worked, attended church, and raised their families here. I still have family ties to the area and visit on a weekly basis. Many of the friendships that I hold most dear are with the people that live in the area in question. The road is also a designated bike route that attracts visitors, particularly in the spring and summer. The residents of this area are particularly concerned about their way of life. Farmland throughout the county continues to dwindle as developments expand northward via the I-77 corridor. We have witnessed the steps our neighbors have taken to preserve the integrity of the area. Historic Daltonia Plantation to the east has placed over 600 acres in a permanent easement to the Land Trust of Central North Carolina. The A.L. Patterson Farm did owner participation of RUR zoning, and residents of U.S. Highway 21 did R20 zoning from Harmony to Houstonville. In addition, the West Hunter Jr. family has purchased approximately 170 acres, approximately a quarter-mile away on Dare Road, and they are turning it into a showcase farm now known as Hunting Creek Farm. It was not that many years ago that the majority of the land was farmed. Although this statement can still be made today, the number of farms continues to dwindle. We are particularly concerned about mobile home parks, single-wides, and the negative attributes these types of properties bring to an area. Not only do these types of properties, if they are rented, invariably appear to be the breeding grounds for crime, thus removing the peaceful life the area once enjoyed, they also have a tendency to pull property values down as there are high rates of foreclosures on the ones that are owner-occupied. I've witnessed this firsthand as a mortgage banker with Bank of America for the past 16 years. We have the ability at Bank of America to finance both single and double wides if they meet federal standards. Out of all the customers I've had cross my desk in those 16 years, I have yet to see an existing manufactured home meet those federal standards unless it was originally set up as an FHA home loan. In many cases, they are not set up to those standards, and the potential buyers are forced to use, as you commonly know, a subprime lender that we've heard so much about over the past few months. Although we know that change is inevitable, we would like for the effects of change to be positive for our homes. As Le Corbusier once wrote, the home should be the treasure chest of living. We are asking for this zoning change to protect our way of living, our treasure chest. As I have lived both in and out of this area, I find no truer words than those written by the short story writer O. Henry, who wrote, "You can't appreciate home until you've left it." As landowners, we do not wish to offend anyone with this request. We are merely trying to be proactive and protect the area. A zoning classification of RUR would help us preserve the integrity of our community. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We haven't anyone else wishing to speak in favor or against this request. Okay. If not, I'll close this particular part of the public hearing and entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve this zoning change request and to make a finding that the approval is consistent with the adopted Iredell County Land Use Plan, and said approval is reasonable in the public interest due to its consistency with the Iredell County Land Use Plan. As a result, said approval furthers the goals and objectives of the Iredell County Land Use Plan.
Thank you, Mr. Williams. Are there any questions? Do we have any questions regarding that motion? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye. Aye. Those opposed, likewise. Okay, Ms. Smith.
We have a zoning ordinance amendment proposed tonight. Tony Quinn with HQ Marine has requested a change to the RPO standards that we have in place, that are currently in place on Highway 150, but could be put in place on other roadways if deemed appropriate by the Board of Commissioners. This situation stems from the fact that we have Mr. Quinn or whom he represents put a fence in on Highway 150 that did not meet our code. We do not permit these fences, so it was unbeknownst to him. We happened to find out about this and started talking with them about some of their options, and an amendment to the ordinance was one of those options. Through our research and our observations over the years, we found that what we have in place now has not necessarily done what we thought it would do. Currently, our ordinance states that you can, in your front yard along or in an RPO or roadway protection overlay, such as this, you have to have a wood or natural material or a fence that's made out of natural materials. That seems to work well when they first go in, but as over time they tend to weather pretty badly, and some of the cases that we have, as I'll show you, look pretty bad. The fence and the vegetation that has been put in and that we've looked at in other areas actually looks just as good or better along the roadway. And when this was put in place, aesthetics was one of the main issues at hand. These are some of the situations that we have out on 150 now, because this is the only area where we have this RPO. We have another one in place on another road. But what we used to get were these just straight chain link fences, no vegetation. They were the galvanized type of fencing, and just were set out there mainly for security. And as you can see, what we saw, it's just plain. Nobody's really doing anything unless we were requiring them to do it. That's where the RPO came into play. These fences here, as they're the, I'll call them the coated fences, and they've got vegetation that's put in place and look much better than the two here. And I'm not really singling anyone out. We just didn't have the regulations in place at the time. When we adopted the standards, we required that all new fences in the front yard be of a natural material. So wood is generally what we're going to be dealing with. And I went out to take these pictures. This is at Country Corner Marine, and they put in split rail. Looks good, but it doesn't provide any security whatsoever. And this is down towards Quiet Cove Road, past Big Daddy's hydro hoist. And this was the fence that they had in at the time, which was as you can see, it's fallen over. They have subsequently fixed it. But as you can see, there's nothing really special about what they've done. And looking back and in retrospect, I wish I knew what I knew now, what I knew then. Yeah, that's right. All the way around. But couldn't have really anticipated that this would happen. This is HQ Marine's fence here, and I apologize for the pictures. They don't show up quite as well as on the screen, but it's a black 6-foot fence, if I'm not mistaken, and they've planted shrubbery along the fence. This is, traffic's pretty bad through here, so I got off the road a little bit, but the same applies here. It looks good. I'm willing to say that, we could have done a better job, back in, I think it was 2000 when we first did this. This is a reasonable change in our opinion, the planning staff's opinion, and the planning board agreed also, and we would like to recommend that change. And I'd be glad to answer any questions that you have.
Any questions, Mr. Smith? Thank you, Mr. Smith. Anyone in the audience who wishes to speak in favor against this particular change of request? Not, I will entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we grant this request.
Okay, Ms. Tice. Any questions regarding the motion? If not, all in favor say aye.
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 Those opposed, likewise. Thank you, Mr. Smith.
The next item that I have is the comprehensive rewrite to the subdivision ordinance. And what I'm going to do is just go through some basic information, including the intent and why we went through this process. And then I'm going to turn it over to Aaron Burris, who's with Benchmark CMR, who has been the author of the proposed ordinance. The purpose of what we have undertaken stems from the county growth study that took place back in '06 and '07. Many of the recommendations that came out of that study, which we'll go through in a little bit, address residential development and the impact that all of the residential development that has happened in the last 15 years or so has had on infrastructure. So that has stemmed this project because we felt that the best bang for our buck for hitting all of those recommendations at one time was through our subdivision ordinance. We've had basically the same ordinance since '89. Back in 2000, I believe, we did make some minor changes to it, but really nothing substantive. So basically, we've had the same ordinance as far as its substance and intent since '89, and a lot has changed since then. And as you all know, the historical pattern of development has put a big crunch on our infrastructure and on our services. Residential much more so, in my opinion, than commercial. And through this ordinance, we've tried to come up with ways that are common sense, that are going to bridge the gap between personal property rights and those impacts that new development is having. What I've tried to describe this as is to minimize the impact or the footprint that a new development is going to have on the area. When going through this process, there are several items that are in our strategic plan, the county strategic plan, that are specifically addressed in this ordinance. Public safety concerns, and these are just the standard titles of the goals. But under public safety, the water connectivity requirement and fire suppression standards go hand in hand with public safety. Land use and environment. We have various protections for natural resources through this proposed ordinance. We could have gone much further, but what we have in place, I do feel, is going to make an impact, and it will provide a much more systematic land development process and program. And finally, through transportation, requiring that a traffic impact study be put in place to mitigate the impacts of that development on existing traffic and congestion problems is very beneficial, as well as the just coordinated construction of roads in general. I'll just go through these very quickly on our growth study recommendations, and then Aaron will take over from here and hit the specifics. But through the growth study, we had the recommendations were that interconnectivity requirements be put in place, turning lanes on roads where traffic improvements are needed, open space requirements, public water sewer connection requirements, fire and emergency service standards and requirements, time limitations on approved subdivisions, and that a traffic impact study for developments over 100 lots. These were issues that we got through that process and through our summer retreat last year. So we've tried to hit as many of those as possible. Open space is not included in this ordinance or a specific required open space standard. County's going through the master plan for parks and recreation now, as you all know. We're also going through our comprehensive plan right now. So felt that when those two processes are done, that's a more logical time to address that if you feel that it's still a need. So unless you have any questions for me, I'm going to go ahead and turn this over to Erin, and she'll go through some of the specifics. And I think we do have one individual that's going to make a specific request that I can probably address after Erin is done.
Hi. Throughout the ordinance, there were basically 3 different types of changes. There were formatting changes, there were procedural changes, and there were also some subdivision design changes. The formatting changes mainly dealt with organization of the ordinance. Things were, put together that needed to be together, and then also the numbering system was addressed so that there was a definite hierarchy in the ordinance to make things easier to find. The focus was to make sure that the ordinance was user-friendly for staff and user-friendly for developers as well, anyone who had to use it. And along those lines, there's also flow charts, tables, and diagrams included where they were not before. Throughout the ordinance, there were basically 3 different types of changes. There were formatting changes, there were procedural changes, and there were also some subdivision design changes. Throughout the ordinance, there were basically 3 different types of changes. There were formatting changes, there were procedural changes, and there were also some subdivision design changes. The major procedural changes that were included in the ordinance, what used to be the subdivision review committee is now going to be called the technical review committee. The function is basically the same, but basically the technical review committee is there to help the subdivision administrator review subdivisions, to make comments, and the subdivision administrator will make sure to the greatest extent possible that those comments are addressed. Also included are optional pre-application meetings with sketch plans. These are primarily intended to help developers understand the process that they need to go through and head off any major issues with a subdivision design before it gets too far along. But these meetings are optional. Minor subdivision plats are now limited within the boundaries of the original tract. This is sort of to prevent someone from trying to do several minor subdivisions when ultimately it would have constituted a major subdivision had they gone through the proper channels. So it sort of closes what was a loophole. Major subdivisions are now required to have a concept plan for those subdivisions that have more than 30 lots. And this is just to ensure that there is a definite comprehensive and cohesive plan for your larger subdivisions to make sure that all of the issues are going to be addressed. And there's also included provisions for family subdivisions, that they are exempt from the same process that like a minor subdivision would have to go through. And then finally, the subdivision design changes. As Ron had mentioned in the list that he showed, this addressed several of the growth study recommendations. Traffic impact study would be required for subdivisions with more than 100 lots. Secondary fire access would be required for subdivisions with more than 30 lots. Connection to water system would be required where the water was available on a graded scale. There's also perennial stream buffers of, I believe, 30 feet on perennial streams. The septic field easements were also addressed. I repeated that. I noticed that secondary fire access. And then also fire suppression measures were also included in some of the design changes. That hits the major changes, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you all have about the substance of the ordinance if you have those.
I had one question, and I did my homework. I just didn't bring it with me. So I went back and got it. But one question I had, and I didn't mean to spring this on you at 7, but I did, to my fellow commissioners, I did mention to it prior to this meeting. I appreciate the fact that you're trying to make it easier for families to live in close proximity to one another. And Mr. Smith and Mr. Allison, I've always admired you gentlemen for your appreciation of personal property rights. So I mean that sincerely. The possible conflict I see in the ordinance, and I may be wrong in the way I'm reading it, is that you give great latitude as far as family subdivisions, but I have some apprehension when you turn over to the water connectivity regulations, and it says lots 2 to 10, if they're within 200 feet of a public water source, they have to connect. The problem I have here is if you have 2 or 3 family members who desire to live in close proximity to each other, and they do have a private well, are they going to be subjected to the same criteria as a subdivision? Am I wrong in the way I read it, or can we amend it in some way that gives me a greater degree of comfort with it?
The intent was that they would not be subjected to that. It may be just a little change in the wording to make it a little bit more clear in that section that you're referring to, 5.12, the first letter, letter A. It might be beneficial for us to say any minor or major subdivision rather than any subdivision, just to make sure that it's clear that family is not included. If the family is exempted from, the process, and it's also exempted in regards to access in certain places. But just to make it clear and, to make everyone comfortable with that, we can make it say any minor or major subdivision instead.
Okay. I'm satisfied with that. That's the only question I had, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
They
Any other questions?
did a good job.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in favor or against this particular? Okay. Request?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Rich Hoffman, and I work in Mooresville for a company called Princeton Management. We're a local land developer. We do work in Iredell County as well as other counties. I can see we're doing a rewrite of the subdivision ordinance is quite a bit of work, and I would like to commend staff. They've been receptive to me. I've called on them, and they've been very supportive and basically listening to me. And I've had a couple topics. Overall, I think it's a good piece of work. I think a lot of work's been gone into it, and I do appreciate the county and the staff. One point of consideration that occurred to me was as I read through the draft, there doesn't seem to be a provision for those existing preliminary plans that have already received a preliminary approval from an expiration date. I can see where having a predictability and an expiration on the subdivision makes a lot of sense from a planning perspective. We all want to have some predictability of what's going to occur, when it's going to occur, and that makes sense to me as well. I think going forward, I can see where a preliminary approval from here onward would get that expiration date. My concern, though, therefore, is really on the existing preliminaries. They were approved under an ordinance that didn't necessarily have a certain time frame of expiration. And when I read this ordinance, it appears to me that they will be subject to an expiration date now. I think it's between 2 and 5 years from what I understand. I would like just to throw that out. This is a pretty unstable, difficult housing market. I think and any relief we can get from having to finalize plans sooner rather than later could help local developers. And I appreciate you listening to me.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Smith, would you like to speak to that?
Yes, sir. And I appreciate Rich. He's always been real easy to work with us and gently nudging us along when we need to. But he's been good to work with. This is a change that I had brought to you all at the last meeting, and not really expecting everything to be digested at one meeting. But the idea or the issue that Rich has is that under the way our ordinance was presented, if you have a subdivision that's been given preliminary plat approval by, we had June 18th, 2008 as the date, then you had 2 years to complete that subdivision. Well, I think that's a pretty short span of time, and I would say that rather than going with a 2-year expiration, essentially, that you have 2 years to file, if you have a preliminary in place, you have 2 years to file a plat, file a final plat, and then subsequent phases, that's your first final plat, and then in subsequent phases you have up to 5 years to get that done. Now, in that time, there are vesting provisions that could take place because of once roads are put in and things of that nature, and substantial expenditures are put into place, we'll have to honor certain things. But what it does, it doesn't give existing subdivisions that have just preliminary approval a free pass. So there's some balance there if we were to go with a 2-year limit or a 2-year deadline for getting your first phase in on that preliminary, first phase, the final plat, and then 5 years from there on out. So then we can deal with them, in a systematic way from then on.
Any questions regarding?
That sounds pretty reasonable to me. I mean, we're not asking them to be built out in 2 years. We're just asking them to be platted. And like I say, a lot of these are, whether they're platted or not, are going to have some degree of vesting. Is that right?
Some degree, yeah. Yeah, there will be some degree of vesting because we'll have such situations that come in that there are roads in place already, that a final may not have been approved as of yet, or there may be a bond on a particular subdivision for the roads. So we'll have to deal with those on a case-by-case basis. So vesting will probably be an issue that we're going to have to deal with for a while, I would suspect. But as with any of those cases, you have to deal with them as they come along.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Smith. Is anyone else in the audience wishing to speak in favor or against this request? Not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'd offer a motion that we approve this, and if it pleases the rest of the board, that one amendment that this lady recommended, where it would mention in 5.12.1, rather than say any subdivision, it would say any minor or major subdivision, and that would exclude the family subdivisions. I think that shelters them from going through a burdensome process.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Johnson. Any questions regarding that? Go ahead, Mr. Smith.
I'm sorry. That 2 and 5 year limit, is that something that would be included?
Yes, sir.
Okay, just wanted to clarify.
Okay.
I would include that as an amendment also, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
That's an amendment to it?
Yeah, it's not in the original ordinance. That is something that Mr. Smith...
It's not in an original, and that's my fault. It's not in the original, but it is something that I would recommend based on everything.
We're good.
Okay, and you include that in part of your motion?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Any other questions? If not, all in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, likewise. Okay, Smith?
This next amendment this next proposed amendment goes along with the zoning ordinance. But this is taken verbatim from the subdivision ordinance that was just adopted and really just deals with landlocked parcels and our record keeping, essentially, making sure that we have a good basis of information to go from to find out if something was landlocked back in 1992, and it'll help our staff to do their jobs in determining what the real situation is. But this mirrors exactly what we just adopted in the subdivision ordinance, just making sure that everything coincides, and I would recommend approval.
Okay. Mr. Smith, as a point of information, does the language shall be allowed to divide a maximum of 2 lots from that landlocked parcel mean you can have a total of 3 lots?
Yes, sir.
Any additional questions for board members?
Original ordinance only allowed 2, is that correct?
No, the original allowed 3 as well, total.
Okay, maximum of 2 may be divided, okay.
Basically, it's a date change. That's all that is, or all this one is.
Okay. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in regards to this request? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I propose that we adopt this amendment as presented.
Okay. Any questions regarding the motion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye. Aye.
Thank you, Mr. Ross. Consideration of public comments regarding the fiscal year 2008-2009 Outer County budget. Is there anyone in the audience wishing to speak in regards to the Outer County budget? Okay. Anyone on the board have any comment?
I'll just want to congratulate and thank Mr. Mashburn and Ms. Blumenstein. I think we've trained them well. Once again, they presented a budget that I think very closely mirrors the philosophy of this board. And I would thank my fellow commissioners for their work as well. And I think that from time to time we have minor differences on things, but we always unanimously take a pretty conservative approach, and I think our staff properly interprets that, and I think it's manifests itself in the budget proposal that they made. And they had some very difficult work to do this time, and I think they've done a good job. I'm a little bit concerned if we can stand another year of this downturn in this economy without it having some serious effects on our fund balance and our ability to maintain the tax rate. But we'll just have to pray that the economy improves. But I want to thank them for that.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to thank Mr. Mashburn and Ms. Blumenstein also. I think they know how to get blood out of a turnip because they've done a wonderful job this year on this budget, and I'm sure their decisions have not been easy to add 8 employees this year, and I believe maybe we added 44 last year. So they do very well at saying no, but they've come up with a good budget, and we appreciate it.
Thank you. I'll pile on, but on a different note. This was a year where everybody didn't necessarily get what they want. But one thing that I was impressed that Mr. Bashburn did include in the budget, and this kind of goes to all the folks who've ever provided input or ever come to any meetings. We've had a lot of surveys and citizen groups throw their 2 cents worth in as we've developed strategic plans and such. That is one of the things that always came as a priority, was that we do something about having some parks for use by the county, or to have county parks. And even though this was a very, very difficult budget year, Mr. Mashburn used the vision and the goals of that countywide vision that we had, and he listened to the people who overwhelmingly said that was a priority of theirs, and we did increase the amount of money that we set aside for use for parks. So even though a lot of folks didn't get what they wanted, that was one area where we did kind of, I guess, go against the tide, and I can say that I would think that all the citizens who ever participated in those groups, your voice was heard, and that's clear evidence that their voices were heard. So thank you very much.
And I'd like to agree too. I think looking at our neighboring counties, many are not have been quite as successful as you have coming up with a budget, and I think it says a lot for the resiliency of the county itself. And at a time when the economics levels seem to be decreasing for a lot, and even ours, even with those hard times, we've been able to do some things, and you've been able to create a budget that was balanced without using too much of the fund balance. But at the same time, you've been able to put money into capital for as Ken said, the parks, and don't forget the schools. Look at the money that's gone into the school system, and at the same time, keeping our tax rate at a relatively low for the state. So I appreciate what you've done.
This one was time, Mr. Madison. We thank you. Do you have questions regarding the budget or comments you want to make?
The only regret I have is we don't have the ordinance ready tonight. Go ahead and approve it tonight. But as you know, we do have one more work session,
right,
and just a couple of areas, and we think we have worked those areas out. They were relating to the increased fuel cost, and we think we've worked that out. So we'll present that to you on Thursday night. And then, of course, at your next regular meeting would be the budget ordinance, which we hope that will be adopted at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if I could say one more, I don't mean to sound teachy or preachy, but a lot of folks need to understand about county government is that we need economic growth to maintain a low tax rate. And I can sit here and tell you with a high degree of conviction that in order for the county to stand still in its ability to deliver services, and I'm talking about not expanding the role of government, not creating governmental largesse, but to maintain the level of services relative to the increase in population and inflation. So if you take the growth in population and the inflation rate, Iredell County needs about 8% in new revenue every year to maintain the level of service. And some people may find that difficult to believe, but in some years it'll be a little less than that, some a little more than that, but on average, year in and year out, it's pretty close to 8% if you look at it historically. This year you have about a 4% increase in revenue. And there's, again, I thank Mr. Mashburn and Ms. Blumenstein and my fellow commissioners, but there's a lot of folks that contributed to the budgetary, to the integrity of this budget this year who aren't in this room. And that's a lot of dedicated county employees and department heads who had to somehow find the money in their budget for increased fuel costs and had to forego a lot of the objectives that they desired, that they sincerely and for the most part were correct, that would better help them to deliver services. So it's almost a cliche now, they're doing more with less, and they're to be congratulated as well. And I think the great uncertainty in this budget is what is going to happen to fuel cost. That it's well beyond the control of anyone in this room. But.
Okay. Having said that, is, again, if there's no one else in the audience to speak in regards to the budget, if there are, this would be the time to do it. If not, I declare this public hearing closed for all public matters tonight and call on Mr. Mashburn for...
Ms. Blumenstein will do the administrative matters, please.
Added to the consent agenda is memo number 10, a request for adoption of the Mooresville Comprehensive Transportation Plan. Memo 11, request for adoption of budget amendment number 48 to recognize additional allocations from the DSS Child Daycare Program of $64,000 and Special Children's Adoption Program of $63,000. Memo 12 is a request for approval of budget amendment number 45 to appropriate insurance proceeds to the departments that originally incurred the insured losses. And item D is a request for the approval of the May 20th, 2008 minutes.
Okay, are there any additions? If not, do I have a motion to accept the administrative matters budget?
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, been moved. Any questions? All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, likewise. Okay, we'll move along to announcement of elections on boards and commissions. We do not have any. Appointment to boards and commissions. Adult Care Home Advisory Committee, 3 appointments. Anyone?
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Marsha for
Okay.
Is that,
She declined.
she did?
Okay.
Okay. Well, I don't nominate her then.
Okay. Any other nominations for that particular committee?
Mr. Chairman, I move to table.
Okay, motion to table. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed. Okay, next. Cleveland Planning Board, ETJ, one appointment.
Ms. Tice, how come you look at me every time that comes up?
That was your assignment.
Motion to table, Mr. Chairman.
Motion to table. All in favor of that board, please say aye. That motion?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Nursing Home Advisory Committee, 4 appointments.
Motion to table, Mr. Chair.
Motion to table. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Animal Grievance Committee, 1 alternate appointment. Anyone for that? Motion to table. Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Caroline's Partnership, 1 appointment.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate Bill Thunberg.
Okay, nomination for Bill Thunberg. Any others? All in favor of Bill Thunberg, please say aye.
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 Those opposed? Okay. Central Carolina Workforce Development Board, 2 appointments.
Chairman, I'd like to nominate Carol Johnson.
Okay. Ms. Johnson been nominated. All in favor of that, please say aye.
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 Okay, that leaves 1 appointment there. Farmland Preservation Advisory Board, 3 appointments.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Jim Dobson, Jerry Turner, and Dennis Overcash.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed likewise. Fire Tax District Board, 3 appointments.
Chairman, I'd like to nominate Billy Trivet, Jeff Tucker, and Frank Phillips.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Eye Care Board of Directors, 2 appointments.
Mr. Chairman, I would nominate Keith Williams and Carrie Garvey.
Okay, Keith Weed and Kerry Garvey. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed likewise. Juvenile Crime Prevention Council, 10 appointments.
Mr. Chairman, I'll nominate Sally Dellinger, Don Earnhardt, Rudy Davis, Pam Navy, Vicki Dane, Lee Byers, Steve Sexton, and Sam Swain.
Thank you, Mr. Robson. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed likewise. Michigan Community College Board of Trustees, 1 appointment.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to nominate Joe Troutman.
Okay. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Mooresville Planning Board, 1 appointment.
Mr. Chairman, I would nominate Johnny Gray Dodson.
Okay. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Nursing Home Advisory Board, 2 appointments.
Mr. Chairman, I nominate Ms. Ruth Waters and Susan Kasperger.
Thank you, Mr. Johnson. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Region F Agent Advisory Committee, 1 appointment.
I don't have a nomination, Mr. Chairman, but I'd like to thank Barbara Barrier for her many years of serving on this Region F Aging Advisory Committee.
Thank you, Ms.
She's
Cox.
done an outstanding job, and she is not eligible for reappointment.
Do we have anyone else?
No, I don't.
Motion to table then?
Motion to table.
Motion to table that. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Social Service Board, 1 appointment.
Mr. Chairman, I'll nominate Ms. Betty Marion.
Okay. All in favor of that appointment, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed, likewise. Unfinished business. Do we have any? Anyone have any unfinished business? Okay. New business? Okay. County manager's report.
Mr. Chair, other than the matter that I have for closed session, I just want to draw your attention to a couple of items that I think goes along with the period of time that we're in now and looking at our budgets. And I think we've all heard that less is better sometimes, and this comes from the Los Angeles Times, but it talks about manufacturing in the U.S. shrank less in May than forecast. So even though it shrank less than forecast, which is further evidence that the international demand for American-made goods was keeping factories busy amid the domestic economic slump. And I know Commissioner Williams has indicated that his own experience has shown that manufacturing is staying strong, and that's another reason that county commissioners have always been so supportive of supporting manufacturing with incentives to ensure that we have our share of that progress when it does occur. It also goes on to say the figures along with the Commerce Department report showing that April construction spending dropped less than forecast, and that eased concerns that the economic downturn would intensify. I thought that was some good news, and hopefully if it continues to be good news, maybe things will not be as drastic as we had anticipated. This also comes from the Record and Landmark. Did want to bring to your attention, it says Iredell County is one of 28 counties listed in extreme drought, the third highest of 4 drought levels as determined by the United States Drought Monitor. All counties surrounding Iredell County also reside in the same classification. And, you know, it's amazing just how quickly we can have a good rain for a full day, and by a day and a half after that with high temperatures and wind, you don't see it at all. So even though we've seen some improvements or some lessening of the downturn in the manufacturing end, our agricultural industry is still very much affected by the drought situation that we have. Just wanted to bring that to your attention.
Thank you, Mr. Mashman. At this time, make a motion to go into closed session for property acquisitions under 143-318, 11A, Section 5. Thank you. That's the motion. All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? There's no action that need to be taken as a result of that closed session. If there's no other business, a motion to adjourn. All in favor of that motion, say aye. 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 We're done.